Humanity is going through difficult moments like never before. We have lost our loved ones with a glimpse of an eye like never before. Our lives have been affected dramatically like never before. Our relationship with our Creator will never be the same like never before. Our priorities in life are dictated to us like never before. Our freedom is no longer in our hands like never before. And life will never be the same after these difficult moments. Join our live Ramadan show like never before with Hatim Al-Abdissalam and engineer Muhammad Farouk on Oman FM, your nation station, every Saturday till Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. to discuss our lives like never before.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, all praise be to Allah, the master of the day of judgment, and peace and blessings be upon our beloved messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to your program Never Before with me Hatim Al-Abdissalam and brother Muhammad Farouk. How are you, Muhammad?
I'm wonderful. What about you?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Excellent, alhamdulillah.
Muhammad, today we have another topic which is important and which has touched our lives dramatically in one way or the other, and it's still affecting our life. Today we're talking about climate change.
Right.
The entire world has been affected by climate change, and especially now in the times of the pandemic, it is still affecting us, maybe in a positive way. So where do we start, Muhammad?
Well, climate change is something which is global. It's been studied and propagated more by scientists. Unfortunately, because it doesn't seem for an average person the impact in front of his or her eyes, they are oblivious to what needs to be done. So they're thinking this is something which is the responsibility of the scientists or somebody in a higher position making decisions, and they're doing a wonderful job, and I have to continue with my life the way it is. However, it's been becoming more and more visible and magnifying, and one example is these bushfires which start every so often in Australia.
Yes.
And towards the, let's say, last quarter of 2019, they were going on.
And even before that in the United States.
Exactly,
they had,
on the west coast, yeah.
Yes, the worst fire ever.
Yeah.
Affected by the environment.
Exactly, and this became so serious that it was becoming a threat to the society, and the media started to give it more and more coverage internationally.
Yes.
And never before have we seen such huge fires in so many places at the same time, out of control.
Yes.
And in case of Australia, as an example, what we are told is that almost 18 million acre was lost. So this is not just, as an example, greenery like vegetation or forest. Just think about the destruction of the habitat of the animals who seek refuge in those areas and call them homes. And speaking of animals, more than 500 million animals they perished. The fires were so massive and so widespread and so intense.
Subhanallah, Muhammad, I watched one of the videos of the fire in the United States last year, and it was horrific to watch that video. It felt like the Day of Judgment, the amount of fire, the blazes, people screaming, people fleeing away. Subhanallah, it wasn't a pretty sight to see. And just because we are not affected directly by these climate change phenomenons that are happening, it doesn't mean we are safe, because one way or the other we are going to be affected.
Exactly.
Recently in Oman we were affected by the grasshoppers, or some of them call them locusts.
Yeah, swarms of locusts. Yeah.
And that was something also we will touch upon during the show, inshallah.
Exactly, and here we'll look at it into the fact that this disturbs the whole cycle of our lives and the animals, the whole environment. It's not just a few degrees going up every 5 years or 10 years somewhere, so why should I care? That kind of a thing. As an example, going back to the Australian fires, a lot of the livestock was destroyed, and that's a direct impact on the food supply if we think about it. So and then the trend continues as we stepped into 2020. Fires were still raging on, and then we had the floods in Indonesia, we had the earthquakes in Puerto Rico, Turkey, Caribbean, and
in the Philippines as well.
Yeah, the volcanoes in Philippines, and you touched upon the locust swarms moving from Africa and through Middle East and towards the Asian sides. And if you go on the internet and do the research about the organizations which keep data about all these floods and about earthquakes, and they keep all the statistics, and they monitor the planet, you will see that not only the frequency of these what we call natural disasters is increasing, but also their magnitude and severity is also getting worse and worse.
I heard someone who was explaining these phenomena that are happening. It's like the human body when a virus attacks the body, or bacteria, for example, and then the temperature goes up, and the immune system also starts working. It's like an alarm telling you that there's something wrong.
Something's wrong.
There's danger that is harming you. And I think planet Earth is also going through the same thing with all this carbon emission and all chopping down the forests, and the pollution, the oil pollution that is dumped into the ocean, and many other stuff that we're going to talk about today. The alarm is up, and the earth is suffering, and maybe it's time to rinse and purify earth by making a difference in this world. And maybe this pandemic came the right time for us to change our habits and our ways, so that we can have back the comfort of this planet.
Exactly, because think about it, we have only one planet to share, and for those of us who are in the habit of thinking a little bit into the future, this is the only one planet we're going to leave for our next generation. So we need to stop being so selfish when it comes to consumption, and so heavy on resources that it's just messing up the whole landscape. And as these abnormal weather-related activities are happening more and more, there's a lot of scientific data which is pointing fingers towards the record-breaking temperatures. Ever since scientists have started to record temperatures, every so often we see a new all-time high, right? And then there's the months of severe drought where we see extensive long period of time without any rain, which is very dangerous for the vegetation because we don't get a good season of crops and all that. And the generic term used for this is called global warming, and this is resulting in sea levels. There's a lot of content available for those of us who want to further explore this topic, and we should, about the increase in CO2, and where the sunlight comes and it cannot get reflected, it gets trapped by within the ozone layer, and that increases the temperature as well. So we are living what's called the greenhouse effect, And again, this boils down to the selfish nature of the human person. If we look at it from a scientific point of view, a spiritual point of view, an intellectual point of view, there's all the evidence is against this thing. You know, it's like there's a goose that lays golden eggs, and you just go and you slaughter the goose.
We are to be blamed for most of the things that are happening to our planet today.
Exactly. I mean, they were even doing research a few years back, and they were predicting that this year, in 2020, the Hajj would be so hot that it'll be actually a health threat to the pilgrims. Looking at the trends, but now it seems like that due to COVID-19 situation, there might not be a Hajj this year. So what I'm trying to say is that everything is interconnected and heavily dependent on others. So when we mess up one little thing and create little bit imbalance, the ripple effect goes very forward. Like you said, we might not see it. We haven't seen the smoke coming from the fires in Australia, but it has definitely played a negative part in towards the overall health of the planet.
And actually, Muhammad, if you see every other species or creation of God on earth is living as per the standards and the rules and regulations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated for us.
As per
the
nature,
only creature who is not really abiding by the rules and regulations of Almighty God is the human being.
Exactly.
And he is causing all this trouble for himself and for other creatures as well. You've touched on the number of species that were lost in the fire in Australia. Almost half a billion
different animals
lost out of these species. And this is not something very easy to digest. Maybe later on we're going to have Brother Muhammad all the way from Australia to tell us the magnitude of such a disaster. But where can we continue from this, Muhammad?
Yeah, basically, see, for those skeptics out there who are still saying, is this real or not, and why is this happening? If we look at the spiritual access, this is mentioned in Quran, which is the book of guidance, the final book of guidance by the divine creator, God Almighty. And in chapter 30, verse 41, God says that corruption has appeared throughout the land and sea by reason of what the hands of people have earned. So he, that is God, may let them taste part of the consequence of what they have done, that perhaps they will return to righteousness. So there are three parts to this very deep verse. And the first one is that, yes, we are responsible for what's happening around us. So whether we have scientific data or not, we are still responsible for messing up with the planet. It could be less vegetation, less fish in the sea, like you mentioned, pollution in the water.
So we have to admit. The first step is to admit.
Yeah, recognize it and admit it. Yeah, admit it, own it. And the second thing is the climate change is here, so we realize that the damage done is real, and the damage which is done is by us. And then the last part of the verse is that this realization, like you said, the first step is we admit it. This realization might make us do a U-turn, okay, and come to the right path. So whatever is happening right now is not the right path, okay. It's very alarming. And just imagine if we continue on this road, what's going to happen down the line, okay?
Yes.
So if we don't repent, consequences would be even worse for our next generation compared to what we're facing right now. Okay, because like you said, just like a body, the planet is giving out signs that something is wrong. It's trying to fight back. Okay, so in other words, all this is related to consumption. If we don't change our lifestyles voluntarily, then we might have to face another situation like COVID-19 where we'll have to change our lifestyle overnight.
I think most of the people might be thinking that we are in this mess because of the policies of government and industries. So it is out of our hands as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, in the matter of speaking, us as individuals, we play the biggest role.
We are
And
feeding
have,
the beast.
We have a say.
Yeah.
So, for example, in terms of consumption, if we reduce our consumptions, those industries
Will
wouldn't-
produce less.
They will produce less.
Yeah. What's
It's-
happening right now?
It's exactly what is happening now to the oil markets, where a lot of people are, consuming very little fuel because of the lockdown, and it has forced the oil market to go down in terms of production because nobody wants to buy fuel.
Exactly.
Nobody is consuming
Exactly.
fuel.
Exactly. And if we do our research, we find out that there are two main culprits behind what's going on. One is the industrialization, massive production capacity, and second, moving that capacity and the people, which is transportation. So we were discussing before we, started this thing, that what could be the positive side of this thing, and that is the reduction in pollution, which we're seeing. Okay,
Subhanallah.
because we're consuming less. As a result, industry is producing less. Even if you go to supermarkets and all that, the whole emphasis globally right now is on essentials. Okay, only if it's necessary, go out. Only if it's necessary, buy it. Don't get into panic buying, and don't start hoarding, and don't start saying it's the end of the world and going out and just buying all the toilet paper which is out there on the market shelves.
Yeah, that by itself is a different topic.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to have a show about it.
So
inshallah.
do shopping, with your mind, not with your heart, right? Don't buy stuff just for the sake of it. So these things are what we call in other language, and there was a moment where people started to realize that this is not right, and they started something called the minimalism.
Yes.
Okay, but it was not gaining so much traction globally. Now we have a golden chance. We're living it. We're moving less. We're doing most of the stuff on the internet. We're consuming less. Okay, so if you look at it, most of our lifestyle is contributing towards less pollution. And there is, again, scientific data that validates this fact. It's not just you and I sitting here and making stuff up.
I was talking to one of the friends, and we were discussing about simplicity in life, and basically when it comes to people losing their jobs, and I was telling him that as Omanis, we don't have a problem to go back living on dates and water, because that's how our ancestors survived, and they lived a very simple life. They ate dry fish, the small ones, and water and dates, and maybe the normal Omani bread, very very light, and they made it and they survived. So maybe this experience of the COVID-19 is a golden opportunity for us to go back to our roots and just consume the minimum that will keep us alive.
Yeah.
And see how it goes.
Exactly.
I'm not saying here that we're preaching that everyone needs to get rid of all the food and just live on dates and water. But what I'm saying, it's a golden opportunity to try it, even in the circumstance of the month of Ramadan. It's the best time to try. Previously in Ramadan we would have these feasts or invitations where members of the family, 20-30 people, would come and will fill up the table from here to there. But now that's not happening anymore. You don't have an excuse to do that. So it's just you and your kids at home.
Exactly.
So just have one meal. It's sufficient to keep you alive and to keep you running to the next day of Ramadan, and that's about it.
Two things are happening. First, we are revisiting our relationship between needs and wants.
Yes.
Second thing, what our needs are, we are reducing them. So as an example, coming to the example of the food, instead of going out and hitting a buffet with 10 dishes and 5 desserts, I'm at home preparing one thing.
Yes.
And my family is okay with it. We are still enjoying good health. And,
And you're not really missing out on, going through the COVID-19, Muhammad.
Mhm.
I was just thinking about it, and even talking to my kids. Okay, they miss going out, they miss going to the mall, playing with their friends, school, and so on. But in terms of, products,
Mhm.
okay, we're not really missing out a lot, because the homemade food tastes better.
Mhm.
It is healthier. It is, prepared under your supervision,
Yeah.
and you know exactly what you're shoving into your throat,
And it's not overpriced.
and it's not overpriced. It's manageable.
Mhm.
So, there's nothing wrong with living that life, as long as if we look at the bigger picture, that I'm doing this for our planet, I'm doing this for our betterment,
Mhm.
I'm doing this for, to preserve the environment
And to please God Almighty.
and to please God
Yeah,
Almighty.
it's mentioned in Quran in chapter 6, verse 141. But waste not by excess, for Allah does not love the wasters.
Yes.
Okay, so scientific data, divine teachings, everything is on the same page except for our habits and our wishes and our desires. So we need to decide, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to further destroy what is left, or do we want to slow down and hopefully at some point change things around? So like you mentioned, a lot of people, they say it's the government's job to do that. But first of all, we need to start generating awareness. This can be done on an individual level, on a collective level, and finally even on the government level. That's fine. But we need to make volunteer changes to our lifestyle, because if things get so disastrous and government introduces some laws, we might not like those laws. So it's better to self-audit ourselves and steer ourselves out of an otherwise unpleasant and painful future.
Okay, I think, Muhammad, we can take our first call for
Sure.
the day,
Okay.
which is from Brother Muhammad Qadan,
Mm-hmm.
who is calling us all the way from Australia, and he is the co-founder of Tenfold,
Mm-hmm.
which is a non-charitable organization that works very hard to produce special products for people who are reverting to Islam. They have their golden product, which is the prayer mat,
Mm-hmm.
that has all the instructions in different languages, where it is given to people who are embracing Islam to learn how to pray. So let us give the opportunity to Brother Muhammad to tell us about some of the things that happened during the fire in Australia, and how they worked in that environment.
Sure.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Muhammad.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. First, I'd like to thank you for having me on the show again. It's an honor and an absolute pleasure. And also, I want to wish you guys a blessed Ramadan this year, alhamdulillah,
Same to
as
you.
we enter this beautiful and blessed month. In relation to the fires, subhanAllah, in Australia, now, every year we actually have bushfires in Australia, so it's quite normal for us. And for me personally, growing up here in Australia, as long as I can remember, we've always had bushfires in summer. Some are much worse than others, obviously, and some are memorable, and some are just normal kind of day-to-day bushfires. I'm not trying to downplay it, but when you're used to something, you kind of expect it. But this bushfire was quite different, subhanAllah. We, throughout the year of 2019, had very minimal rainfall. So, as you can imagine, the bush and the forest became very dry, especially down the bottom, around the roots. So, it was kind of primed and ready. If there was a bushfire, this could be a catastrophic kind of result. And unfortunately, that's what happened, and nothing that the the firefighters could do would stop that. But as weeks went on and then months went on, we quickly came to realise that this was much more serious than initially anticipated or expected.
Yes.
On average, to give you an example, on average in New South Wales, the state of New South Wales, it's generally about 300,000 hectares gets burnt each year.
Subhanallah.
This year, or last year, sorry, it was 5.5 million hectares. So you could imagine it was more than 10 times the amount was burnt in this bushfire compared to the average over the years. And to put it into more context, or to really paint a picture for you, we had 12.6 million hectares burnt. In Oman, your landmass is 30 million hectares. So almost half of Oman, picture this, almost half of Oman was burnt.
Subhanallah.
That's a huge area to have lost, subhanallah. And the stats itself, we had, subhanallah, we had 32 people that passed away through in the bushfires. We had over 2,000 homes lost over the 5 states, and a staggering, this is a ridiculous amount, 1 billion animals were lost, subhanallah, in this last bushfire. 1 billion animals, that's a large number. There was, driving in my state, in a place not far from here, you can see the animals lined up on the side of the road, dead, because they couldn't escape the fires. But we had approximately 11.3 million people affected by smoke as well. So with those stats, you see that it's quite a damaging and catastrophic bushfire. But in saying that, there was a lot of help as well. Alhamdulillah, the Australian community got together. Muslims and non-Muslims got together and fundraised over $500 million in relief and aid.
Wonderful.
And the Muslims specifically, they rallied together, and the organisations, they came together to provide food, water, blankets. They even held barbecues for firefighters and rescue teams on the ground, in the ground zero, close to the blaze. And they also provided basic necessities, gift cards, and millions of dollars were fundraised for the Muslim charities to provide aid to the fire relief here in Australia, alhamdulillah. On top of that, the Muslim community, they also prayed Salat al-Istisqa. And in my home city in Adelaide, the Muslim community, they prayed the prayer in the park and had Christian priests also join the prayer as a show of solidarity, unity, for common good and common cause, alhamdulillah. And also the Mufti of Australia held a large gathering of prayer in Sydney, which were also joined by other faith leaders as well, alhamdulillah. But I think, as disastrous as it was, one of the biggest lessons we learned, and I think one of the biggest benefits and take-home messages, was that through unity we can overcome anything. And it shows that how humanity, together, we can always come together and in need rely on one another and help one another. And we live here in Australia in a multicultural and diverse society. And it's always heartwarming when you see people from all walks of life come together for one common belief, which is goodness in humanity. And this for me, wallahi, was a take-home message of a disastrous event, was that you can always turn to people, good, loving, heartwarming people within your communities to come together for one common cause, which is khair, which is goodness. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Muhammad, Jazakallah khair for that. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on the souls who have departed in the fire, and also to help the Australian community to overcome the difficulties of the fire, the loss of people, property, and wildlife as well. And may Allah make it easy for all of you. Thank you very much, Brother Muhammad.
That was a deep insight. I mean, the way he shared the relevant facts,
Yes.
and especially the aftermath. So we often hear we need a common enemy to get us all together or united.
Yes.
And this was an example that, humanity is not that much different. So in peacetime, we find a lot of differences and we are at each other's necks. But when a calamity falls, we all unite and we all try to, figure out and try to change the reality on the ground, and we all bow down to the same God.
I think, Muhammad, the common words that you always hear in every calamity, whether it is in the Muslim world or anywhere else, the three words are unity, humanity, and solidarity.
Yeah.
These you hear them frequently, and they are the things, they are the elements that help you to overcome those difficult moments. If we turn the table around and say, in terms of a calamity, if you don't have unity, everyone is in their own,
by themselves.
By themselves, and people who don't think about humanity, they just think about themselves, and then you don't have solidarity as well. It will, you already have a calamity, and then you have another calamity.
You'll make it worse, yeah.
This brings me also to racism, which I want to address early in this show. Is when a calamity happens, it does not choose
which race it's gonna hit.
Which race it's gonna hit. That's why in these difficult moments, it is the time to get rid of this disease. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, I've seen some reports in some of the countries, and maybe some of the countries in the GCC, where you see nationals or locals asking the government to ask expatriates to leave or to not give them medical attention and all these nonsense, where I feel that it is not the right time to be racist. It is never a right time to be racist, but specifically in calamities, it is the time for us to show our human side, to show compassionate, to sympathize with others, to lend a supporting hand to others, and not to be racist and outcast.
Exactly. I mean,
a group of people.
this is wonderful to hear what has taken place in Australia post the bushfire scenario in terms of solidarity and all that. Unfortunately, there are some places in the world, in some places where people are supposed to be educated and modernized, and in other places they are still emerging or developing economies. And in the situation caused by COVID-19, this coronavirus, some of them have become further extremists and blaming that the propagation of corona is happening because of Muslims. You know what I'm referring to.
Yes.
And so what I'm saying is that yes, most of us, with the help of God Almighty, with the right guidance, right education, right company, right mindset, we'll get together and we'll figure out reality. But you will always find some elements in minority, and it makes it worse when they're in power and they have media at their disposal. They're in control and command of that. So there will always be some undesirable elements spreading out hate and bigotry. But by large and far, as humanity, I do agree that we do come together in times of crisis, and we should, rightfully should.
I think one of the things that also attracted me from what Muhammad said is that when they had the congregational prayers of Salat al-Istisqa, which is a special prayer performed by Muslims to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for rain. It is only done in specific circumstances where there is a lack of rain, and Muslims all over the world, they perform this prayer. So he said that when this prayer was performed, priests also joined this prayer. And this is a very, very good sign, because it shows leaders in communities, setting a positive examples for people to follow.
Yeah.
When you have leaders in your society who are role models, and they are the ones who are holding hands with other communities and making the right step, then it encourages the normal people like me and you, Muhammad, to follow their footsteps and to stand together in solidarity. So this is a very, very positive thing. They also, Brother Muhammad also mentioned where some Muslims donated a lot of money in charity for these crises, for the people who lost their homes and so on. So the act of charity, of giving out charity, is a very high status act that Muslims adhere to. Yeah. So we should not confine ourselves when it comes to charity to only Muslims or to only communities that we know, but it should be for humanity, for everyone who is in need, for everyone who lost a home.
I would like to add something here. Here in the local landscape, because of the this COVID-19 situation, a lot of people are in dire straits when it comes to finances.
Yes.
And I was talking to one of my friends, and I was very happy to know that him, along with the set of volunteers which is growing, they are helping everybody across the board. So it's not just one nationality or one religion or one ethnicity. And while he was communicating with me, I could see all the different calls coming in from different people, and how he was entertaining them and trying to accommodate them. This is the true spirit which can only be given by the deen.
Because if you look at it logically, Muhammad, everybody needs to eat at the end of the day. Everybody needs a shelter. Everybody needs security and peace. So if this is a unified human quality, then we shouldn't deprive people from these needs. The necessity.
It's not normal.
Life.
I mean, just think about it. If you were in that situation, for example, you went to a hospital for treatment, and they say, "Wait a minute, you're a Muslim. Sorry, we cannot entertain you." How would you feel, right? And this is happening in some parts of the world.
Okay, Muhammad, going back to the topic of climate change, I think we have seen one of the most extreme effects of climate change in the fire of Australia, and there are other effects of climate change in a small scale, like the locust that was here in Oman. But overall, I think I'm very much interested in personal efforts, where people are doing a lot of personal efforts to preserve the environment. And I would really, really look forward to the statistics of garbage disposal in the month of Ramadan this year, because I've seen it for last year, and they were talking about tons of food that is being wasted in the month of Ramadan. So let's see this year if we can all work together as one and unify our efforts to reduce or to minimize the wastage of food in the month of Ramadan, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bless us, can purify earth, and can bring it back to what it used to be in the past. A pure earth or pure planet for us to live on.
Exactly. And this wastage takes place during every stage of the logistics of food. It's not just, when you talk about a wastage, most people think, okay, I put so much on my plate and then I couldn't finish it and I threw the rest. Okay. But actually wastage takes place when you move stuff from the farm to the wholesale market, and then from the wholesale to the retail. And then we buy it and we put it on our fridge. Right?
Yes.
And so many times we see a lot of things that turn brown, because often we buy with our eyes, not with our stomach.
Yes.
Okay, I want this, I want that. Realistically, you cannot cook all 5 vegetables at the same time. Realistically, you cannot have so much salad at one time. So why not buy one or two fruits? Why you have to buy oranges and apples and banana and? Realistically, you will not be able to finish them. Number of them will expire, and then you'll have to throw them out. So we need to be more sensible and do whatever we can, play our role, and minimalism will definitely help.
I think, Brother Muhammad, one of the things that I think would work is the weekly wage. If we turn the system of paying employees on a monthly basis into a weekly basis, I think we can solve this problem. Where I have witnessed in some of the European countries, they have the system of weekly wage. So you only go and buy the groceries once a week for that week. So you'd buy like 3 potatoes, 2 tomatoes, and 1 chicken, and which is only enough for that week.
Yeah.
But what happens when you go to our countries where you have the monthly payment of wage or salary, you have this chunk of money coming only once a month, and you have this inner fear that by the first week of the month, khalas, I have no more money, so let me buy everything now in bulk, while you don't actually need it.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you go back and we change the system into the weekly wage, I think we might be able to solve the problem of the overconsumption of food.
Exactly, and this will help in more than one ways, because here a lot of stuff is imported.
Yes.
And that includes logistics, and that includes transportation, and that includes, for example, air freight. So just because us, at the end of the food chain, just modifying our habits slightly can have a long ripple effect in a good positive way, only if we are willing to give it a shot for, let's say, 20, 30, 40 days and turn it into a habit. And I do agree with you. I've traveled in the West. Here, things that we buy by the kgs,
Yes.
there they buy by the pieces.
Yes.
And even if you must have seen at the airports and other places, you buy food in grams. It's not like, take a plate of rice and fill it up too high.
And honestly speaking, Muhammad, if you go to most of the restaurants, you would find that when you order a plate, it is normally for 2 or 3 people. Yeah, and I think maybe that should also change when it comes to restaurant policies. You can bring down the price and chop down the quantity of food on the plate, because yes, people pay for that food, but at the end of the day, morally speaking, that food goes to the garbage can. Yeah, because people cannot finish it. And forget about this crazy mentality of a supersized burger, the size of your head, and a supersized hot dog, and a supersized pizza, and all these crazy stuff, which are coming to encourage people to consume more, and which leads to obesity and other health problems. So let us go back to, having very simple, enough food just to keep us alive.
Exactly.
I remember, Muhammad, when I went to visit one of my relatives in the UK, and I noticed they have a system where they don't present the food on the table. So what happens at lunchtime normally, you'd be sitting at the table, everybody has a plate in front of them, they go to the kitchen, they put the food onto the plate, and that's it. So there's only one round, and that's it. But in our culture, you see the food is being presented in front of you
in massive quantity.
In massive quantity, which is very tempting for you to consume, and then
you're forced for seconds.
You're shoving this food into your throat, and most of the time when you can't finish that food, it's already touched. Nobody else can consume it, and because of the coronavirus, there's no sharing and caring. You dump it into the garbage.
No, exactly. See, we've been, as humanity, we've been given wonderful teachings in Islam. For example, when we talk about environment, 2 big things are water and forestation, like you mentioned. And there's a hadith there where Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, said that Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if the resurrection were established upon one of you while he in his hand had a sapling, then let him plant it. Okay, so this hadith tells us about the message of hope, and also not ever giving up, and also doing things which we will never live to see. Like I heard once that you have really figured out the purpose of life if you're planting a tree which you know you will not live to see the shade of that plant.
Yes.
So you're doing it for next generations. So let us be people of wisdom, let us be deep, let us think more, and like we mentioned in our earlier program, because of the current situation, we do have time to think.
Yes.
Okay.
Muhammad, as we are in under lockdown at this point of time, there are certain tips where we should follow in terms of preserving the environment and climate change, which is a consumption of water and electricity.
Exactly,
Yeah.
utilities.
So what happens now, you find in the lockdown where you have members of the family, instead of all of them sitting in the same room, only consuming the electricity in that room, you see people scattered, everyone in their own room.
There are too many rooms in the house.
Too many
That's
rooms
the first
in the
problem.
house.
Second problem is the utilities.
Yes,
yeah.
so everyone is busy on their smartphone or tablet, and they don't tend to sit together. So in this lockdown, I think the best opportunity for us to bond.
Yeah.
So we should spend more times with our families
In the majlis.
in the same room, in the majlis, instead of every one of us being independent, isolated
Locked
in
up
their own rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's enough that we are we are under lockdown. We shouldn't have another lockdown in our house, in our rooms. That's not the idea of the lockdown. The lockdown is to bring us together and not to isolate each one of us in their own room. So let us look into reducing the electricity bills of our homes, the water consumption, that we are not going out now. No need to be paranoid and have a shower 4 times a day, and even go to the extreme where you can consume like a bucket of water instead of just turning on the shower and singing your favorite song in the toilet.
For 10 minutes.
Yeah, for 10 minutes. So I think these small things which we feel that they are insignificant, they are significant.
Exactly.
And they make a difference in this world.
Yeah, and you mentioned about water, which is a big global issue, the other one being food security. And there's a hadith about that also, that even if you are doing ablution, that is the wash up before the obligatory prayer, even if you happen to be at a river or at a stream, still don't waste water. Okay, so the teachings are given to us and they're mentioned. The issue is either we don't know about them, or we know about them, we forget about them because we don't remind each other, or we know about them and we don't care.
Yes.
Because we are used to other habits, and it's difficult to change a habit on your own unless it's a forced habit which is caused by the current situation.
I think the Muslim lifestyle, Muhammad, originally is designed to protect the climate, and it is designed to preserve wildlife and environment and so on. Just because Muslims are ignorant today, some of the Muslims are ignorant today and are not following the right path of how to live and how to preserve the environment, then they, instead of them being role models, they have become destructive tools that are very destructive for the environment and the climate. So Muslims around the world, it's the time for us to go back to our simple lives, the lives that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained for us to live, and to go back to minimalism. Is it right?
Minimalism, yeah.
I can't say it when I'm
minimalism. That's okay. No, we Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, throughout his life, he lived it, and he showed how fulfilling it was, and how satisfying it was. Now it's up to us how much complicated we want to make our life. We'll never be satisfied. Doesn't matter how much we buy and how much we store and how much we consume. Storage is a big business. In the West, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry where you just store stuff. If you don't have enough space in your house,
Yes.
you get external storage, you pay monthly, and you put there your extra stuff which you'll probably never visit or never use.
It's a pity, Muhammad. We wished if we had a call from any of the brothers and the sisters who visited the North Pole, who could share their experience with us on what exactly is happening to our climate in the North Pole and how it is affecting the entire world. But unfortunately, we couldn't get someone to speak about that. But maybe, inshallah, in upcoming episodes, as our shows will be continuing throughout the month of Ramadan, every single day except Fridays.
Yeah.
And this experience is new to all of us, and that's why we call this program Never Before, where are going to discuss a lot of issues that never happened before,
Exactly.
or are very new to us as an experience. And your feedback is also welcomed. You can call us anytime on the show. So how do we wrap up today's show, Muhammad, when it comes to climate change?
See, climate change is deeply connected with the economic activity,
Yes.
and that in turn is deeply connected with consumption and greed.
Okay.
So on an individual level, if we don't change, if we don't stop overconsumption, there will continue to be overproduction, which will be a strain on resources, and on one end we'll be losing our resources faster than we should, and at the other end the processes of production and transportation will be adding more and more towards the pollution. So we're hurting the world in more than one ways. And the data collective has shown that in the past recession of 2008, the overall environment became better. Okay, now in 2020 we're facing the same scenario, and within a time frame of few weeks, let's say month and a half,
Yes.
pollution levels have gone down drastically on a global scale. So this is not a one-off. Now all the evidence is there. God is showing us what needs to be done. Question is, in our post-corona life, are we going to continue to live minimalism and be satisfied and have gratitude for God, or will we go back to our own devices and start destroying the planet again? So in a nutshell, from my side, the last thing would be waste not, want not.
Yes. And I think, Muhammad, we should do these changes that we have voluntarily. We should not wait for something to happen and force us to change, like the coronavirus. We were all taken by surprise in 2020 when the coronavirus attacked the world. So we don't want to be in that position where, it is imposed on us. So it's better for us to gradually train ourselves, make the changes, learn and see, and basically care. Care about the well-being of our planet, care about the well-being of the creatures who are living on this planet, care for the well-being of the climate, and so on. And also for the resources of the coming generation. Now at least we see the light at the end of the tunnel, that there is hope for the coming generations, for the resources, for them to be raised in a safe environment, in a clean environment, and so on. And let us see how it goes,
Exactly.
Muhammad.
Exactly. This is an excellent example that for those people who say it's already too late. It's not too late. We can still turn things around.
Yes, and one of the things, Muhammad, that I think is important is individuals to stand out. I don't remember the name of the young girl who is propagating about climate change, and she even went to the United States. I think I'm not so sure where she's from, but she went all the way to the United States in a boat and to propagate about climate change. She's very young, she's in her teens, and I think she's making a huge impact. And this is the type of young people that we're looking up to, and we want more young people to speak up because it is one of their concerns. We as adults have done a terrible job in terms of preserving the climate, Muhammad, and purifying earth. We have created so much mischief, we have created so much pollution, so much industry, so much war. So I think the hope relies on the next generation to make the difference and to make the changes and to create a better environment for everyone to come.
Exactly.
Any last words, Muhammad, before we wrap up today's show?
Well, as long as we don't live planet before profit, things are not going to change. Right now the world is running on profits before people or profits before planet.
Yes.
So we need to stop being selfish. Like you mentioned that we are responsible for where we're standing right now. We should all own it. However, a lot of us didn't know. But now we know. There's enough scientific data to back up this crisis. Okay, and God is showing us ways where if we take action, we can minimize this damage and turn things around. Question is that are we willing to mend our ways or not?
Subhanallah, subhanallah. Well, I think we come to the end of today's episode, Muhammad, and we hope that tomorrow is another day and a new topic, inshallah. Dear listeners, thank you very much for tuning in on the Nation Station and into our program And Never Before with me, Hatem Al-Abdissalam, and engineer Muhammad Farouk. See you in the next episode, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I was worried because
Mm-hmm.